Hey guys, what is going on? I hope you all are doing well today. Elliot here and welcome back to The Fragrance Well. So for today's video, we are going to focus on one of the most popular and most used fragrance ingredients in modern perfumery, and that is going to be vetiver. So what is vetiver? Vetiver is literally grass. It actually is a type of grass that grows in like little bushels or little clumps, if you will, as opposed to your typical grass that's, just kind of spread out and grows however it just grows, right? So vetiver, a very popular used ingredient, and depending on where it's coming from and how it's cultivated, etc., it's gonna have a slightly different smell. This is why it's one of the most popular used ingredients, particularly as a base note, because it is very, very versatile. You can use it to achieve a variety of outcomes. Your most popular types of vetiver, if you do some research on it, is going to be Java vetiver, which is actually Indonesian vetiver, or Haitian vetiver. The Haitian vetiver is actually a little bit more mild, probably that clean, grassy smell. Some say it even has, maybe a little touch of sweetness to it. It has an earthiness to it, but it's not as thick, it's not as rich, if you will. It's just maybe a little bit more floral in characteristic. And then you have the Java and Indonesian vetiver, which is more warm and earthy overall, has a little bit more of that smoky vibe you may hear sometimes in vetiver scents. And then also, there's just a lot of other varieties of vetiver depending on where it comes from. There's Madagascar vetiver. And again, depending on what it's blended with and how it's used, it's gonna come across differently. Now, in most fragrances, vetiver is a base note in a lot of fragrances, even if it's not listed under a note breakdown. So it's not always something that you can necessarily pick up. It's not always something that's at the forefront, which is why it's so versatile. But then obviously we have those classic scents where vetiver is at the forefront, and we're gonna focus on a little bit of both today. I got 10 fragrances here that all feature varieties of vetiver in a number of different ways. Some of them as the feature of the fragrance, some of them as a supporting role. One thing I did try to do with this list though is I try to include fragrances, at least to my nose, based on, and I'll be completely transparent here, I've never smelled vetiver oil on its own. I need to buy some. You can actually find vetiver essential oil pretty easily, it seems, but I've never smelled it just by itself. But if you read up on it and read the research, or should I say read the descriptions fragrances give, and then just kind of match that to fragrances that have vetiver, if they have them, you can kind of start to learn what it probably smells like. So I'm gonna do my best here, but I've got 10 fragrances here that give vetiver in a variety of ways. So let's go ahead and get the video started. But before we do, as always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please hit that bell icon and enable notifications so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get it started. So let's go ahead and start with one from the House of Guerlain, known to be a very classic gentleman's fragrance that inspired so many vetiver-based scents after it. You probably know what it is. It's vetiver. Guerlain Vetiver. So this one right here, I think was originally released in 1959. I did kind of just check beforehand, but it's a very old fragrance. Obviously, this variation doesn't smell like that did. Obviously, so much has changed since then. But if you get your nose on this, if you haven't already, you can definitely pick up some of those just classic masculine features. Very sharp and tangy citrus, not really fruity variety. It's just zingy. It kind of slaps you in the face. If you're familiar with Eau Sauvage, it's a similar effect where the citrus is just very sharp and forward. This has that. And also a little bit of like a nutmeg peppery spice in here, just giving a different element. And then it's definitely what I would call the woody, grassy vetiver variety with a touch of smokiness. Now, if you look at the note breakdown that is given based on Parfumo, it does not list the type of vetiver, and that is often the case with a lot of fragrances. It just says vetiver, doesn't necessarily say where it came from. But if you just kind of smell, if you get woody nuances, which you do in this fragrance, woody, earthy, somewhat grassy nuances, and you kind of just think like, well, is it more smoky? Is it heavy? Is it dense? Or is it just kind of light and airy? You can probably guess how they used the vetiver or where it might have come from. Even though this is a classic gentleman's fragrance, I think this stuff is amazing. This is actually one of my wife's favorite fragrances out of my entire collection, if not her favorite. She literally calls the fragrance clean shirt, and I don't disagree. It does smell like a clean white collared shirt. Great scent, great vetiver fragrance. Once again, from the House of Guerlain, this is vetiver. Next one is coming from the House of Amarud. This is Lunar Vetiver. Amarud Lunar Vetiver. All right, so I should have mentioned before, some of these are gonna be the kind of a vetiver fragrance where if you're not really comfortable with vetiver, you may not like these, but there are some in here that kind of counter that, if you will. This is another one where I think you really do need to be a fan of vetiver to like it, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on with this fragrance. I kind of think of this one as like a younger brother to Sultan Vetiver from Nishani, which is on this list. We'll talk about that. But this one has very aromatic kind of notes to it, almost like a sage kind of characteristic. So it has that going for it. The vetiver in this, it's listed as Java Vetiver. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of other notes in this kind of countering that maybe heavy woody smokiness you might get from Java Vetiver, but you do kind of pick up on that in here. There's also a lot of tobacco flower in here. Tobacco flower, very kind of sweet floral smell, kind of sweet and soapy floral smell, and this one definitely has that soapiness to it. It's kind of blending with the sage-like aromas in here to really make this kind of a really soapy vetiver fragrance. It's quite complex. It's not gonna be for everyone. But yeah, this one's definitely the kind of vetiver scent that you wouldn't call like clean and easy to wear. This is a very particular scent style using vetiver as the inspiration, or I guess the driving force for this fragrance. So once again, from the house of Amarud, this is Lunar Vetiver. All right, moving on. Next one is coming from the house of Nishane, and this one is Sultan Vetiver. Nishane Sultan Vetiver. Now I mentioned how Amarud Lunar Vetiver is like a younger brother to this one. That's because this one has a lot more vetiver in it. Let's see, I'm looking at the notes now. There's 4 different types of vetiver in this. We got Java, Bourbon, Haitian, and Brazilian vetiver. I don't even know what Brazilian vetiver's characteristics are. I'm not really familiar with what Bourbon vetiver's characteristics are, but I have heard of Bourbon vetiver before. I need to look it up. But this one, you could say, is definitely soily, earthy, kind of dry, and this really heavy floral essence to it. Now, there is a listed note of neroli in here, so that can certainly add to that floralness and a little bit of a soapy vibe, but I think it's the vetiver, just the combination of all those vetivers coming together that makes this have an overall floral vibe. There's also like some absinthe in here, adds a really nice brightness to it. I think you can even see it on the front. There's like bergamot in here as well. So this fragrance has a really bright opening, and to me that absinthe almost adds a little bit of a boozy element to it. But yeah, this is kind of a culmination of many different styles of vetiver all rolled into one vetiver accord that is very strong and is not for everyone. That being said, I do think if you are a fan of vetiver, you at least have to get your nose on this one, because this is truly a vetiver fragrance for kings, in my opinion. Once again, from the house of Nishane, we have got Sultan Vetiver. All right, next one's coming from the house of Hermes, and this is going to be Terre D'Hermes. Hermes, Terre D'Hermes. Now this one here, note breakdown does not list type of vetiver. So, we don't know what it is in here. But there's also a lot of other elements here that I think just kind of are meant to give more character to the vetiver overall. This is a very earthy, almost dirty fragrance, has a lot of smoky elements to it. It has a very orange and grapefruit-like citrus, so the nickname for the fragrance is Dirty Orange, and I love that nickname because I think that is very accurate. A few other elements to this as well. Good amount of benzoin too, kind of adding this kind of dusty warmth to the fragrance. But yeah, this is a vetiver scent that is, considered by many, including myself, to be a modern masterpiece fragrance. I think this stuff is amazing. I know it's not for everyone. Again, some people might associate, I don't really like vetiver with this fragrance. The thing about this fragrance is, while it is a vetiver scent, there's a lot of other stuff in here too that may make you think you don't like vetiver. You have to try, I think, a variety of fragrances that feature vetiver to kind of understand what it could be and see if you really don't like it or do like it. I know for a fact there's at least one fragrance on this list that if you are not really sure how you feel about vetiver, you'll like the fragrance I have. Some of you might know what I'm talking about, but this one here, classic, gentlemanly, classy, modern vetiver-based fragrance, and I love this stuff. Once again, from the house of Hermes, this is Terre D'Hermes. All right, moving on. Got one from the house of Lalique, definitely a cult classic in the community at this point. It's going to be Encre Noire. Lalique Encre Noire. For those who don't know, the reason this fragrance is, as popular as it is mainly because it is ridiculously affordable at discounters, and it just smells really high quality for what you're getting it for. I will admit, as I've gotten my nose on, let's just call it higher quality vetiver fragrances, I can kind of see the difference in the quality overall. I still think this stuff is amazing for what it is. Now this kind of vetiver, let's see, listed, we've got bourbon vetiver and Haitian vetiver. To me overall, this basically smells like damp grass. That's just the way I like to describe it. It smells like damp grass. It smells like grass and mud that has been recently rained on, either in like early spring or late fall or something like that. That's kind of just how I like to describe this fragrance. This does have like a cashmere and like a accord and also some musk to kind of counter it a little bit, make it a little bit more palatable overall. But again, this is one where, you know, you can kind of find out how you feel about vetiver. If you like it right away, you're probably gonna be a fan of vetiver. If you cannot stand it, you might need to try some lighter vetiver fragrances because this one's not trying to be subtle. Once again, from the house of Lalique, this one is Encre Noire. All right, next one's coming from the house of Amouage. This is Portrayal Man. Amouage Portrayal Man. And I say man because there's a woman version and I really want to get my nose on it, but I haven't seen it yet. Anyway, this one here is definitely a more, let's just say it's a more subtle use of vetiver overall, because vetiver is not necessarily the star of this fragrance, but it plays a very important role. There's only 3 notes given for this scent. It's violet leaf, Java vetiver, and Cade juniper. The focus for this one is definitely the violet leaf in my opinion, and then the Cade juniper, which is, let's just call it a thicker, heavier version of juniper, where it's got that kind of freshness and cooling nature, but it's almost like with the Cade juniper, that cooling nature is somewhat removed and it just has this thicker, denser feel overall. And then the vetiver is just kind of mixed in between the two, kind of pulling everything together, giving it a little bit of groundness, a little bit of earthiness, because I don't find this to really be smoky. It's got a freshness to it, really heavy on the violet leaf and the juniper overall, and then to me, the vetiver is just kind of a grounding agent, but I think the scent smells amazing. I will say if you are a fan of Dior Fahrenheit, this is worth getting your nose on. Now, it's not as complex as Fahrenheit, but it just focuses on that violet leaf and doesn't quite have the leathery nuances. That's kind of the main difference in terms of the star of this fragrance and that fragrance. But this one here, if you like your vetiver to be a little bit more subtle, but also an important role in combining 2 simple elements such as violet leaf and juniper together, this one might be worth getting your nose on. Once again, from the house of Amouage, this is Portrayal Man. All right, next one is coming from the house of Mind Games, and this is Scholar's Mate. Mind Games Scholar's Mate. So this one here, the vetiver featured in this according to the note breakdown, and I actually got to talk to the perfumer and she told me about the fragrance, and so this one does have Madagascar vetiver in it. This one, sorry, I just kind of spoiled it. It's Madagascar vetiver. I did a little bit of research before I started the video because I knew this one had a particular scent that I don't really have represented in any fragrance I have in my cabinet. And the Madagascar vetiver, according to a website that actually sells some Madagascar vetiver, they just say it's like more robust overall compared to like your Indonesian or Java vetiver. Java vetiver is the one that is on the mass market, the more smoky, warmer, woody of the variety of vetiver, where this one kind of takes it to a whole nother level, but maybe it's just not as well known or not as well used, or maybe it just costs more so it's not used as much as Java vetiver. Or, you know, it could also just be that because it's so robust and heavy and smoky, may not necessarily blend with everything unless you are trying to specifically make a woody fragrance, which this is. It also has really nice spice in the form of pimento. It has a kind of countering creamy like element in the form of fig milk, and also using some sandalwood to counterbalance the woodiness. But the Madagascar vetiver in this is quite smoky. It is woody, it is dense. And the fragrance overall has that. I mean, you can pick up on the other elements, but it's pretty clear that the bulk of this scent is that woodiness at the base, and I think it smells insanely good. Once again, from the house of Mind Games, this is Scholar's Mate. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and move on to one of the best pound for pound, easy to wear vetiver fragrances you can find in the overall market, in my opinion. This is from the house of Mancera, and it is Vetiver Sensuel. Mancera Vetiver Sensuel. Listen, I'm just telling you right now, If you're looking for a scent that is easy on the vetiver and you just want to get your feet wet, so to speak, this is a great one to check out, in my opinion. I mean, you're talking about just clean, kind of floral grassy, not really overly earthy. It's just like clean grass, but not in that like fresh cut grass way, because there's a lot of other things in here to even tamper down that vetiver characteristic even more, like musk, a little bit of oak moss to give it kind of a fresh green nature. But there's just loads of clean citrus in here, this bright juicy citrus, and I think it's just a combination of citrus like lemon, lime, and grapefruit, maybe a little bit of orange as well. Just a blend of citruses mixing with a little bit of mint to give an even higher depth of freshness, and then you just have this clean vetiver base that has musk and oak moss. I mean, look, you can't go wrong with this scent. I'm telling you, it's a great signature scent option. You can use it for literally anything. Great work scent if you want something that kind of smells fresh and clean, but is not what everybody else is wearing. The note breakdown doesn't necessarily list what type of vetiver is in here, but if I had to guess, it's probably going to be closer to that Haitian vetiver variety. Once again, from the House of Mancera, this is Vetiver Sensuel. All right, guys, so we got 2 more fragrances left. In my opinion, these last 2 have vetiver as a listed note. I think the fragrances definitely have vetiver in them, but the vetiver maybe not necessarily is the star with these last 2, but I think it, you know, kind of plays an important role in the overall makeup of the scent. So, first one is also coming from the House of Amouage, and this is gonna be Beach Hut Man. Amouage Beach Hut Man. Now, this is not a vetiver fragrance. I would not call this a vetiver fragrance. I would say it's a spicy, minty, green fragrance. In other words, it's using a variety of things to give you that green-like feel, that vegetal-like feel. And one of the best notes you can use to do that, especially if you're gonna use it as a base note, which vetiver typically is used as a base note. It kind of acts as one anyway. You might as well use some vetiver in a scent like that. But this one also has galbanum, which is like a spicy plant resin. If you want to give a fragrance, in my opinion, a really kind of spicy but green characteristic to it, galbanum is a good ingredient to use. I'm a really big fan of galbanum. I've got a few fragrances now that have galbanum, and I like every last one where the galbanum is, you know, forward in the scent. But again, yeah, mint, spicy green, and, you know, kind of a woody base, really smooth base, resinous base, plant, vegetal base. And again, I don't smell, from what I know, the best I know how to identify vetiver, I don't really get that in here at the forefront. So it's not the star of this scent, but I mean, if you tell me a fragrance like this has vetiver in here, I wouldn't feel like I need to investigate, so to speak. Once again, from the House of Amouage, this is Beach Hut Man. All right, last but not least, coming from the House of Xerjoff, this is Neo. Xerjoff Neo. Again, not a fragrance I would say, oh, this is a vetiver fragrance. But I would say, you know, if you tell me there's vetiver in here, I believe you. This is another one that has green characteristics to it. This one is a bright, kind of soapy, somewhat smoky, woody feeling green fragrance. Really nice bergamot in here. Great citrus opening, or should I say great citrus top note. Many kind of consider this a citrus fragrance. Listen, it's kind of known for having a great bergamot in the opening, very bright and vibrant and a little bit juicy, but this is a green and woody fragrance overall. The listed note for this in terms of vetiver is going to be Haitian vetiver, so that's meant to be the more floral variety. Makes sense with this fragrance because the woodiness I get from this is definitely more smoky. There's a listed note of Gaiac wood, so that kind of makes sense to me. It has a dryness to it. There's a listed note of cedar wood. That also makes sense to me. So I think if there's Haitian vetiver in this, it's just adding a little bit of counterbalance to that woody base that this fragrance has, while also lending to the green characteristics that this fragrance has. Once again, from the House of Xerjoff, this is Neo. Alright guys, that is gonna do it for this video. I certainly do hope you enjoyed me discussing vetiver a little bit. Let me know down in the comments below, are you a fan of, let's call it heavy vetiver fragrances? I hesitate to say anybody in mass hates the smell of vetiver at any point because like I said, vetiver is used in so many fragrances. It's just often used as a base note that is kind of there to ground the fragrance and not necessarily stand out. But if you're a fan of vetiver fragrances where the vetiver is definitely the star of the show, let me know down in the comments below and list some of your favorite vetiver fragrances because I would love to see what you guys have to say. Thanks again for watching all the way until the end. Please remember to be well and smell well. And I'll see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.